Okay, so these next few videos we're going to be looking at program design, and this is out of chapter 15 out of the Essentials for Personal Training book. And the very first thing we're going to look at is this concept of frequency. And I know we talked a little bit in class, and this is the very first point that you're starting at. And frequency, looking at what's available to the patient or client, and what's their what needs they have. And the book gives you this component of just kind of a baseline of looking at where your split should be in terms of like how many days a week the person should be training. And now this is where they should be training compared to what they have available. So even if you have an advanced client, they might only have 2 or 3 days a week to commit to their training. So this is where you take the client's needs with their availability, and you're starting to create your programming. This is just a starting point, and this is just to kind of help wrap your brain around, but everyone's going to end up being slightly different. When you look at your training frequency, you also start to look at your training split, and traditionally bodybuilding has dominated this split from a body part perspective. So like you have a chest day, you have an arms day, you have a legs day, you have a back day. And as we've talked about in class, we want to start encouraging more of the biomechanics or the movements in terms of your pushing, your pulling, your squatting. And when you look at the push, pull, squat, you've basically covered all of the things that the human body can do from a gross perspective, right? Like you could do isolated lateral raises and arm curls and calf raises and neck curls, but when you hit the push, the pull, the squat, you've covered about 99% of what the human body can do. We can, when we look at that, you could make that your very, very, very easy 3-day-a-week split, like workout A, workout B, workout C. You have a push day, a pull day, a squat day. And then as we talked about, you have multi-planar perspectives with this, so you could move this from the traditional A, B, and C to have more a vertical and horizontal push, a vertical horizontal pull, and maybe a quad dominant, hip dominant, more sit stand squatting versus hip hinge. Now what that does is it gives you 6 individual workouts. So you went from 1 workout, a full body workout, to 2 upper body, lower body, to 3 your push, pull, and squat. And you can categorize these any way you want. You can do an upper body, lower body split. You can do a vertical push-pull day, a horizontal push-pull day. You can do 6 different workouts if you'd like. This is where you take the client's needs, goals, and your expertise and mix it together. So when you have your training day, you're going to be figuring out, are you working out 2 days a week, like a Tuesday, Thursday workout, or a Monday, Wednesday, Friday? Are you doing 4 days a week and you're doing 2 days on, 1 day off? Do you have 4 different workouts that you're doing every other day, or you're doing this 2 days on, 1 day off? Or do you just have 2 workouts and you rotate and you have a workout A, workout B, and then you start over again, workout A, workout B? So you have this creativity where you can get in, and a lot of times people like to do 2 days on, 1 day off. I don't think we get into detail here, but in 230 we talk about neurological fatigue and saying that any more than 3 training days in a row might be too much central fatigue that's accumulating within the nervous system. So something like this, where you're doing 5 days in a row, 2 days off, this may not be as conducive as maybe something like this, where you're doing 2 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on, 1 day off. Now remember, the name of the game and what you're trying to do is you are trying to expose things to people that they're not used to doing, right? You want to create something that they're slightly uncomfortable with. You don't want to kill them, right? We want to stimulate, not annihilate. But we also want to do things that they are challenging, because if we don't stimulate them, there's going to be no reason to change. So it's this balance, this game between not too much and not too little, and this just right concept of this exhaustion. So it's the 1 step back, 2 steps forward, right? So we have the homeostasis, your baseline of fitness. You impose some kind of stress, the exercise, your body has to recuperate from it, and if you time it right, you're going to be operating at a new homeostatic level. If you wait too long or you start too early, you're not going to make any progress. And so we want to see this stepwise function: 1 step back from the loading, 2 steps forward from the recovery, 1 step back, 2 steps forward. Now you look at this and you think, okay, let's time it perfectly, and this is where we start to get into trouble if we try to maximize our results. And so if we look at our maximal results theoretically right here, you'll see that we've already started to taper off in our progress, and that when we do any kind of intervention, whether it's nutritional planning or stress, in this case exercise that we're doing, we want to bias or at least err on the side of conservative. We want to fall on this side of the curve, on the upside of the curve, and because you can see that once we get over the cliff here, this is a pretty sharp drop. And we want to stay away from this injury, overtraining, inflammation, and occasionally pushing over this limit might not be bad. Actually, there's some training justifications that we might want to break that limit a little bit, but we have to make sure that we're allowing that recovery. So when we look at where we want to be, we want to definitely be within this range here where we are the amount of stress that we're exposing the body to, what we've designed in terms of our frequency, our volume, our intensity. We're starting shy of our maximal results, because if we can repetitively stay in this side, we'll see this improvement over time. So we want to stay away from plateaus. We definitely want to stay away from a decline in function, and we want to see this gradual improvement over time. And so the way it's done is by being conservative, right? Think smarter, not harder. Less is more. When you're competing in sport, the no pain, no gain, give it 110%, pain is weakness leaving the body, all of those mantras are great. When we're doing our training for fitness and for improved health, that has no business being in our vernacular. So this is borrowed from Dan John. He looks at this quadrant, and I like this because it really kind of helps us wrap our brain that there are certain training paradigms that are there for athletes, and there's those for Olympic aspects and for those that are in like combat situations. Then you have general fitness aspects, and so to have guidelines that fit all four is wrong. To try to take quadrant 4 perspectives and apply them to quadrant 3, you're not going to get the same type of results. So athletes are trained like athletes. Police officers and firefighters are policed like firefighters. Military personnel are trained like military personnel. Group sports are trained like team sports. And you have your fitness, and you have multiple goals that are within that. So you're answering these questions over here on the right: the who, the why, and the how. And so that first aspect, who, is making sure you really know which category your athlete is in, or your client is in. I want to reiterate that sport does not equal fitness, and we make this mistake a lot. Not that we consider all of our clients as athletes, but we have these sports that exist like bodybuilding, powerlifting, Olympic weightlifting, running, and particularly bodybuilding, powerlifting, Olympic weightlifting. These all use the same tools that we might be using for this category of people over here. And what we do for these people and what they need to do, not appropriate for these people here. So just keep that in mind, that the guidelines and the requirements and the things that are good for bodybuilders, power Olympic, may not be appropriate for us to get to that point. Now, in your textbook in chapter 15, it has a specific aspect too of making sure you know your training age. So not necessarily your chronological age or your biological age, but where do you classify as beginner, intermediate, or advanced? So you can kind of go through and look at this chart and read that chapter, and you can determine, are you making justifications based on a beginner, a beginning athlete, an intermediate weight trainer for fitness, an advanced client that is involved in riot control, and so they need the strength for that. Whatever it may be, you have their combination here. So ultimately, we start to ask the question, why? What are we trying to do, or why are we doing it? And ultimately, people get involved in fitness for basically a handful of things, but aesthetics, fat loss is always going to be on there. It might not be their priority, but no one's ever going to really complain about fat loss unless you're a sumo wrestler or a sumo wrestler. I don't know. Not that fat loss is going to be the key. There might be other aspects, but fat loss is a byproduct of having optimal lean body mass. So not that getting down to a shredded 3% body fat is the case, but fat loss is going to be a common goal for many. The other end of the equation when we look at fat mass is the lean body mass, particularly the muscle tissue. And you can see our 5 primary aspects. So hypertrophy, putting on size, strength with size or strength without size if you're a weight restricted athlete, muscular endurance, metabolic outputs, and functional improvements, right? Can we move without pain? Can we control our own body weight? Can we walk without a walker? All of those things. But it really does come down to lean body mass. Muscle, regardless of any of these, is the key indicator behind all that. When we look at the quality of movement, we're improving our movement, whether it is to improve our metabolic output, our endurance, pain-free movement, to increase our height of how high we jump or how fast we run. It's all about this muscular system, and not just the muscular system, but the neurological recruitment. So that's why I have here muscle and recruitment. So you have the structural integrity, and if you have the functional output from the neuromuscular aspect to improve that. So whether it's hypertrophy, strength, regardless if you're working out with a physical therapist or strength coach or anything in between, your tools are basically the same. You are applying stress to the body. You're trying to increase hypertrophy and recruitment, so either sarcoplasmic or myofibril hypertrophy, or motor unit recruitment to make the nervous system stronger for that, but you're increasing that neuromuscular aspect. So it does come back to lean body mass, and your tools, you might have a more sensitive client, but you're applying stress to the body at amounts that it's not used to being applied to. You're allowing appropriate recovery, and then you're getting your adaptation. So you want your stress followed by recovery, 1 step back, 2 steps forward. If recovery is more than the stress, you're going to start to become complacent and your body's going to reclaim some of its resources. The stress is greater than recovery. You're going to start that downward spiral of injury. So we want to be very specific on how do we apply stress to the tissue. So when we look here at this training pyramid, at the base of that is exercise adherence, right? Because consistency is key. That's the most important of all aspects. That gets into behavior modification and a change, and we talk about that in future class next semester. Where we're at right now is we'll be talking about 2 through 4, and particularly you can see the next biggest base on that pyramid is volume, intensity, and frequency. And so when we start with volume, we look at sets.